A flurry of papal appointments. A tabernacle is stolen from a Brooklyn church, and Canada wants to confiscate everyone's guns. We'll cover that and more on today's Crisis Weekly Wrap-Up. Today is June 3rd, 2022, and I'm Eric Sammons. So the big news in the Catholic world, at least this week, was there was a lot of different papal appointments made, a lot of shuffling of the deck, so to speak. The first news of the week was that Pope Francis appointed 21 men to be cardinals. He announced that they'd be made cardinals in August. Here in the United States, the biggest news was that San Diego Bishop Robert McElroy would be named a cardinal, which is quite a shock if you look at how historically how cardinals are named. I went into this in depth in our podcast on this previous Tuesday about what all this might mean, so I'd encourage you to watch that. Also this week, though, Pope Francis named some new members of the Congregation for Divine Worship. And he, most notably, Cardinal Cupich of Chicago, Cardinal Tobin, and not Cardinal Tobin, Cardinal Farrell, and some others were named, and Cardinal Sarah was removed. And this is a big deal for those of us who attend the traditional Latin Mass, although I think, to be honest, it impacts all Catholics, not just those who attend traditional Latin Mass, because what's happening is that Pope Francis is appointing ideologues along his lines to the Congregation for Divine Worship, which regulates, in a certain sense, the worship of the church, the liturgy of the church. We already know Archbishop, soon to be Cardinal Roche, who's the head of the Congregation of Divine Worship. He's already released things that are very anti-traditional Latin Mass. But if we need to remember that somebody like Cardinal Cupich isn't just anti-Latin Mass. He's anti anything that might show reverence or be at all related to the Latin Mass. So, for example, ad orientem, which, of course, we all should know, has nothing to do with Vatican II. Vatican II did not say anything about ad orientem worship. But somebody like Cardinal Cupich celebrating ad orientem worship somehow is a rejection of Vatican II. And now he's going to be on the Congregation for Divine Worship. So that's a real troubling development, to say the least. Another big move in the church was that Bishop Robert Barron, the auxiliary bishop of Los Angeles, but most well known as the head of Word on Fire, the media empire, Catholic media empire that he's built, he is being transferred to become the bishop of Wynona Rochester in Minnesota, a small diocese in Minnesota, and he's going to now be the bishop of that. And there's a lot of speculation on what this means. Is this a promotion or demotion? I would just recommend, I was just on Taylor Marshall's podcast this morning. I'd recommend you check that out. We talked all about this, went into this in depth. But ultimately, all these moves to me seem to be saying that I think Pope Francis realizes that his time is running out. What I mean by that is he's 85 years old. He's had a number of health problems. And as anybody that age with that type of health would be thinking, like, I might not be here much longer. That's just the way things are. And so I think he's trying to rush to get things in place, put all the pieces in place on the game board so that when he is gone, what he has started will continue. I think ultimately that's what's happening here. And so we might even see more moves in the coming months. In other news, this is awful, frankly. A tabernacle in a Catholic church in Brooklyn was stolen, and it was done. It was a very impressive job as far as if you're a thief, I guess, because it was a tabernacle. Here, let me pull up a picture of it. It was a tabernacle you see on the left. It's a tabernacle that is a beautiful gold tabernacle, and if you look on the right, you see. Sorry, that picture's not the greatest. They basically cut it out. They cut it out of the wall or something, and they took it. Now, this tabernacle was worth $2 million. Now, initially, some people are speculating this is another one of these cases of people trying to steal the Eucharist, steal the host for a satanic black mass or some other blasphemous action. But it sounded like what happened was that the hosts were just left, just strewn across the altar, on the floor, and things like that. They weren't interested in it. They were really taking the actual tabernacle itself. Now, they did also desecrate a couple statues. I think they cut the heads off a couple statues of angels. And also interesting is that there is a security camera there. but the security footage was stolen, that the people who did this also stole on the DVR or something that would have the security footage of this. So this is a very well-planned job. So we should pray for those people who the thieves for their conversion, because this is obviously a sacrilegious, awful act that they did. Also pray that the tabernacle, I mean, I guess it's probably damaged such that it can't be restored exactly, but pray for the parish there as well. Also in other news, Canada announced that they are going to, they proposed a bill in which they would limit the what could be sold, a national freeze on buying, selling, and importing handguns. Handguns. We're not talking about assault rifles or whatever the left wants to call this. This is just handguns. They want to basically make it illegal for a handgun to change hands. So to go to buy or sell it or import it. And this is probably the most restrictive measure that they've been taking. It is the most restrictive action they've taken about guns. And they also are proposing a buyback program to buy guns that are already banned, what they call assault rifles that are already banned. They're willing to buy them back, to take them out of as many hands as possible. The idea is it's just another step towards complete confiscation of guns. Now, I think this is just in the proposal phase right now. It's been introduced to the government, the Congress, whatever they call it up there. But the thing that's interesting about this is that Canada would do this because Canada is most well known recently for their restrictive measures about COVID and how awful they were and the lockdowns. Now, here's the thing. Those two things are not unrelated. The fact that the government of Canada was so restrictive and did so many lockdowns during COVID and restrictions on freedom, and the fact that they want to take away all Canadian guns, those are not unrelated. They're very related to each other. Because the fact is, the more people who own guns, the more of a check is put upon government. And that's a good thing. It keeps the government, hopefully, in some check from being too oppressive. But if you take away all the guns, then the government can do whatever they want. And so I think that, like I said, those two things are not unrelated. And so I think we need to keep track of that story and see what's going on there as well. In other news, today, actually, June 3rd, marks the 100th day of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And it's interesting because the way that this war has developed. Now, I've been very honest about this, that I do not necessarily believe the information we're being fed about this war. I don't necessarily believe, I don't believe everything that Russia is saying about it, but I also don't believe everything that the Western media is saying about it either. So I want to give that major caveat. It's why I haven't covered this too much in detail, because I just don't think we can believe everything we hear. But I do think we know the general sense of what's going on, which is, so if we remember back in late February, President Putin of Russia basically first announced that he was recognizing the breakaway regions of the Donbass in Ukraine, which is the eastern part of Ukraine. He was recognizing their independence because they had been in basically a civil war with Ukraine, the government of Ukraine, since 2014. And they wanted to be more attached to Russia. So Russia finally did recognize that. But then and so that was like, okay, is this the first step towards invasion? Sure enough, a couple of days later, Russia did invade, as we all know. But what was interesting, and I think a little bit surprising to most people, is that Putin did not go simply after the eastern regions. He actually did a full-scale invasion of the entire country, including trying to take over Kiev, the capital. And so that was a little bit surprising that he wouldn't just try to take over the eastern regions, the ones that were claiming they wanted independence and wanted to be more attached to Russia. He wasn't just fighting over there, but he was taking over the whole country. However, what has happened over time is that Russia has changed its strategy. Now, whether or not this was all part of the plan, we don't know, but it looks likely that they changed their policy and their strategy. And now they are just focused on the east. In fact, this is a map just from a couple days ago of what's under Russian control. And you see the Donbass region over on the eastern part of the country that they have almost total control over now. But they've also linked up to control. They already, of course, have control of Crimea. They annexed that in 2015, I believe it was. So you see now Russia is very much focused just on the eastern and some of the southern part of Ukraine and controlling that area, which is, like I said, originally, that says right there, they annexed Crimea in 2014. That's right. It was right after the coup in 2014. So what we see is Russia is now taking over the eastern part of Ukraine. The question is, will they continue to advance and maybe go to Odessa? That's a major port that's very important strategically. And so a lot of analysts think that they're going to actually try to take over the entire southern portion of Ukraine, not just the east, because of the importance of Odessa and those ports there in the Black Sea. Now, the question, of course, is what will they do after they have control? Will they just stay there and make it part of Russia? Will they continue to try to advance? Will they try to take over the entire Ukraine? Will they just recognize? Will they eventually just have a military presence there, but recognize the independence of those Donbass regions? I don't think anybody knows. Anybody who tells you they know is lying, because I think that's one of the biggest problems in our whole relations with Russia and what's going on in Ukraine is we try to project in the future, say, this is what they're going to do. This is what we're going to do. We don't know exactly what they're going to do. But it is interesting to see they are having success in those regions, but they are encountering heavy losses. This has not been land that they've won cheaply. The Russian forces have had heavy losses. So we're going to see we're going to keep an eye on that. Obviously, as Catholics, we should pray for peace, pray that the war is not escalating any more than it already is, and that America, at least over here, we do everything we can to end the conflict and end the suffering over there. The final thing I want to mention today is simply that Pentecost is Sunday. Today is Friday, is Sunday. And so I just encourage everybody to be praying to the Holy Spirit, pray that he would come and he would descend upon us and give us wisdom, give us counsel, give us understanding. All the gifts of the Holy Spirit would descend upon us, descend upon our political leaders, and descend upon our church leaders. But so let's just continue to pray. Come, Holy Ghost.